Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we are going to continue our study of the book of Joshua, the book of Yehoshua, by studying chapter 8 together. And if you recall, we completed the last chapter 7 with the discussion of the transgression of Achan, who was the person who took from the spoils of Jericho, even though it was forbidden to do so, and because of his selfishness, and because of he was executed, and the lesson was firmly placed among the people that this conquering, this conquest of the land of Israel is different from all other conquests. This is being done because of the special relationship with God, and the morals and ethics of this conquest is very different than what is okay with other conquests. Now, the battle against Jericho, the battle against Jericho, had a significant amount of divine intervention, but there was a mix. The people had to act, had to do something in order to bring God's intervention. And that which they had to do was encircling the city. This is going back 2 chapters ago, and declaring that this is being done for God. And this is being done because the people of Israel have a moral system that they want the entire world to learn. And remember, we were going with the explanation of the Ramban and the Rambam, Nachmanides and Maimonides, that the people of Jericho were offered terms of peace, but they refused it. Now, the next city that they went to was the city of Ai, which this was done completely at the behest of the people themselves. There was no miraculous intervention, and the first attempt was disastrous. There was a huge defeat. They tried to attack the Ai, and they were driven back, and they lost a significant number of soldiers in the process. And they discovered the sin among them. They discovered that it was selfishness and greed, and that had to be uprooted. Now they're ready to move on. So now, at this point, Joshua needs to be reassured by God that despite the transgressions and despite what happened, God is still with them. God is still on their side. That the lesson learned with the execution of and the discovery of the transgressor and the remorse shown by the people is enough that their special relationship with God has been restored. So Vayomer Adonai El Yoshua, God said to Joshua, Al tiravi al techas, do not be afraid, do not be techas is just do not feel abandoned. Kach imcha es kol am hamilchama, take with you everyone to fight this war. In other words, not like before where the people suggested we can take the city of Ai with just a small contingent. The whole army doesn't need to go, but take the entire army. V'kum alei ha'ai, and I want you to go and attack the city of Ai. Re'ei nosati biyodcha, you will see I will put in your hands est melech Ai, the king of Ai, ve'et amo, and his nation, ve'et iro, and his city, ve'et arzo, and the land which he controls. V'yasita la'ai u'lamalka, and you will be able to do to Ai and you shall do to Ai and her king, kasher asita liYericho u'lamalka, just as you have done to Jericho and her king. Rak shilala uvehemta tavozu lachem. But now the booty, the wealth of the city you can take for yourselves. Its property, its animals, etc. you can take. Not like Jericho, which had to be dedicated to God. And and God then goes ahead and gives Joshua some strategy. I want you to make a ambush against the city behind it. So you take some of the people and you set them up, have them hide behind the city, not in the opposite direction from which the main army is going to approach. And Yoshua and the entire army went up to the town of Ai. And he took 30,000 men, strong soldiers, and sent them under the cover of darkness ahead of the rest of them. And he told them as follows: You're going to go behind the city as an ambush. Al tarchiku min ha'ir ma'od. Don't go too far from the city. And you need to be constantly on alert, you're constantly ready to attack for the signal. You need to be close to the city so you can get into it fast, and we'll see why shortly. But you also need to be hiding so that the people don't see. So v'ani v'chol ha'masher iti, and I and everyone who's with me, nikrav elahir, we are going to approach the city. And remember that previously there was an approach to the city, and the city drove them back. So the city is going to be confident that they can drive us back again. So we'll approach pretty much the same way we approached before. When they come out to attack us, we'll turn around and run, just like the first group ran. And the people of Ai will say, whoa, this is just another route. Let's chase them. And they will come after us until we get them far away from the city. So the forces of Ai they're going to say they're running just like last time, and we will run from them as if we are retreating. And then you get up from the ambush, and then you can take over the city, and God will place it in your hands. When you do grab and conquer the city, when you take the city, destroy it in fire, just like God tells you. That I have, now you guys know, these are your orders, and take them and do them. And Joshua sent them, and they went to the ambush, the place of ambush where they were hiding. And they were giving directions, so that for those that are familiar with the geography would know which direction the ambush was waiting, between the town of Beit El and the city of Ai, Miyam La'ai, which was west of the city of Ai. And Yoshua then spent the night with the people. Seems a little different than the night before Yericho, where Yoshua encountered the angel on his own. It seems that Yoshua was separate. But here, Yoshua is going into battle with the people, and he spends the night before with the people. Vayashkem Yoshua baboker. Joshua gets up early in the morning, and he got the people ready. And he and the elders of Israel went before the entire nation towards the city of Ai. So we see that the religious leadership, the Ziknei Yisrael, these are not the fighters, these are the elders. They also went to lead the troops into battle. And all of the warriors, the army that was with him, Alu Vayigshu, they went up towards Ai, and they approached the city. Vayavo Negrir, they came opposite the city. Vayachanu Mitzafon Ai, and they camped north of the city Ai. V'agai Beinav Uvein Ha'ai, and there was a valley between the camp of Joshua and the city of Ai. Vayikach Kachamesh Salaf Mish. So then he took about 5,000 men. Vayasem Osam Orev Bein Beit El Vein Ai Miyam La'ir, and he placed the ambush west of the city of Ai. Vayasimu Ha'ametz Kol, I like the plan as we discussed before. Vayasimu Ha'ametz Kol HaMachne Shar Mitzvon La'ir, and so this way the nations had it set up so that the entire camp, the bulk of the camp, was north of the city. V'atakevo Miyam La'ir, and the smaller portion, the ambush portion, they were west of the city. And Joshua went down the night, went down into the valley. And when I saw them, the bulk of the army in the north, with the one where Joshua was, Vayimaharu, and he hurried, Vayashkimu, and they got up quickly. Vayetzu anshe ha'ir likras Yisrael milchama, and the people of the city charged out of the city to engage Israel in war. Note that the king of Ai, remember that we mentioned this earlier, and I'll mention this again, that when a lot of people read the book of Joshua and they read it alone without the context of Joshua being the sequel to Deuteronomy, they forget a lot of things that are taking place here. The king himself of Ai, rather than coming out and suing for peace, chooses to come out and wage war. He did that the first time, and he's doing that again. It's very important to understand that. And we'll see so some more interesting things I'm going to point out as we go through this battle. But here, so the king of Ai rushes out to greet them in war, and in his entire nation, he brings his whole army. Here, Am HaMilchama, Amo refers to the army. Lamoed comes out to greet them, Lifnei HaArava, facing the Arava, which is the geographic area, the plains. V'hu yada, and he did not know ki orev lo me'acharei that there was an ambush waiting behind the city. So the entire army went to greet the people in battle. Vayinogu Yoshua b'chol Yisrael lifneihem, and Joshua and all of Israel then ran from before them. They avoided contact with the army of Vayanusu derech hamidbar, and they started running towards the wilderness. Vayizaku chol ha'am asher ba'ai. And then all of the people in the city of Ai started screaming, "Oh, l'dof acharayim, let's go run after them. Chase them down, let's get them." Vayirdufu acharei Yoshua, vayinotku min ha'ir. They ran after Joshua and they left the city. V'lo nishar ish ba'ai u'eitel, and there was not even a single person left, not in the town of Ai and in Beit El. Beit El is another town. Remember, the ambush was waiting between Ai and Beit El. And apparently the people of Beit El were communicating with the people in Ai, and they heard that people of Israel were running, so they joined in the thing, and they chased too. Asher lo yatzu acharei Yisrael. There wasn't a single person who didn't go chase the people. And it says here, Ish, presumably referring to the soldiers, Vayazvu et ha'ir pesucha, and they left the entire ear open by Yirdufu acharei Yisrael. Now, it's unclear, but it seems like V'lo nishar ish, it sounds like there wasn't even a person, which would seem to mean that even the women and children chased the people of Israel. So there wasn't a single human being. The language, or it could mean ish just as opposed to isha, but usually ish in this context would mean every person, which kind of gives the picture that that even the women and children were waging this war. Which is not impossible if you imagine that even if of course they weren't necessarily warriors, but they once the army takes chase, it becomes the whole city comes to run and chase. Oh, let's go get those Israelites. See, look, they're running. Let's go get them, and everyone starts to run. They don't think it's dangerous because they're running. Vayomer Adonai el Yoshua. So God said to Yoshua. So now that, because Joshua, as he's turning and running, doesn't necessarily know at which point the city is empty. So here is where God intervenes, so to speak, where the miraculous aspect happens. Now, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of the battle. This was almost all strategy, almost undone by the people. But the idea was given by God to Joshua originally of this ambush. And God is going to intervene here with a small thing, a small miracle. Again, we get that sense that as the progression of the conquest takes place, and as the people begin this process of settling and conquering the land, God continues to recede further and further into the background. So God says to Joshua, "Netei bakidon asher b'yodcha," I take that spear that you have and point it El Ha'ai, and point it towards the city of Ai, because now I'm going to give it to you. Vayet Yoshua bakidon asher b'yodo El Ha'ir, and Yoshua then pointed his spear. So while he's running, he turns and takes his spear and points towards the city. And whether or not this signal was preordained as the signal for the people in ambush, or whether or not this signal, they just realized that clearly this was the signal, it was just obvious, is unclear. But it is clear that the people waiting in ambush saw the spear pointing to the city, and they got the message. The ambush got up really quickly from its place. Vayarutzu, and they ran kinetos yado, as soon as they saw him raise his hand and point the spear. Vayavo ha'ir vayilkedua, they came to the city and they captured it. Vayimaharu vayatisu sirbeij, and they quickly, before the people of Ai could turn a notice and come back to defend the city, they burnt the city in fire. Vayifnu anshe Ai acharem, and the people of Ai turned behind. Vayiru, and they saw. Vihine Allah ashan ha'ir hashamayma, and the smoke of the city was going up to the heavens. And they did not have any place to run, not this way, not that way. They saw it because now the those that were fleeing had turned to face them, so they were sandwiched between these two groups. The people, the army that was running into the wilderness turned around, and now they started to chase their pursuers. And Joshua and all of the people of Israel saw that the ambushers had captured the city, and they turned around and they struck down the men of Ai, the people of Ai. And then those that were in the city, the ambushers that had just burnt the city, came to greet them. So and they were between the two in a crushing maneuver. They were stuck between the two groups of Israel, one on this side and one on this side. By Yaku Osam, and they struck them down on Bilti Hishalosurid Palit until there was no one left, no escapees, no refugees were left. Viet Melachai Tafsuchai, and the king they captured alive. Remember, he was the one who chose to wage war instead of sue for peace. So Vayakrivo Soel Yoshua, they brought him to Joshua. And then it was when the people of Israel completed the battle and killed the soldiers of Ai in the field, Bamidbar Sheridafambo, in the wilderness where they had been being chased, and they all had fallen by the sword until there was none left of the people of Ai. Then the people went back to Ai and struck it down. Whoever was left in the city, who had tried to escape to the city, whoever maybe stayed in the city and didn't give chase and was still there, they struck them down as well. And it was of all the people that fell on that day, Meish v'adisha, men and women, Shnei Masar Elef, it was 12,000 people, Kol Anshe Ai, which were all of the people of Ai. V'Yoshua lo heshiv yado, and Yoshua did not take down his hand, Asher noto bakidon, when he raised his spear and pointed it. This is very reminiscent of the wars in the Torah, where we learned of where Moshe held his arms up in the air when the people of Israel were fighting the Amalekites, and when he raised his hand in the air, the people were victorious. Here we have a similar thing where Joshua, who had pointed his spear towards Ai, he did not take his arm down until the battle was complete and the enemy army was completely destroyed. However, the animals and the belongings of the city, that the people of Israel took for themselves, just like God had told Yoshua that this is how it should be done. And Yoshua burned the city of Ai, and it turned into a mound, a ruined mound, or a mound of ruins until this day, the city wasn't rebuilt. And then the king of Ai was hung. There was no torture, no gratuitous violence here, but he was hung and executed ad Eis Erev, and he was kept on the post just for the day until the evening, and prior to the sun set, Tziva Yoshua, Joshua commanded that even though he was the enemy king, his body should be respected. And just like the Torah says, one does not leave an executed body hanging overnight into the night. Rather, one must take it down and bury it properly. So that's what they did. They took his corpse off the tree where he was hung by Ashlicho Pesach Sharir, and they placed the body they threw it on near the entrance to the city which he had ruled. By Akimul of Galavadim Gadol, and they piled rocks upon it. Which there's a large pile of rocks there, which is his burial place until this day. This is not the end of chapter 8, but this is the end of this episode. It is a long chapter. I will stop here, and we'll continue our study of chapter 8 together with the next podcast. Thank you so much for studying chapter 8a with me. Looking forward to 8b, and of course, the rest of this book of Joshua together.